Alright, a very warm welcome back everyone. Today I want to talk about the Cubase control room feature. This is only available in Cubase Pro, but I think it's a very neat feature that you also can use when you are producing music alone and not with others together. So I'm going to break this down, how I use the control room. And well, basically you first want to start off by looking at your inputs and outputs. I just hit F4 on my computer keyboard and this brings up my audio connections. You see that you have the inputs here, you have the outputs here, and in my situation they are not connected anywhere anymore. This is because I enabled the control room. You can do so by going to the control room tab and then activating the control room here. And you can also set your inputs and outputs here in this situation, and this is what the inputs and outputs here are then routed to. So the important thing to understand is that the control room will function as your stereo out bus, for example, but it allows you to take the signal and pipe it anywhere else before it goes out out from the stereo out bus. And in this case, the only thing you need is to set up your output here. In this case, you can do so by just adding another monitor queue, and then probably what you also want to do is change your inputs. In my situation, I have the microphone here, which is then also routed as a talkback microphone in the control room. So I have basically everything together in the control room, and I can use everything together via the control room and not having to worry about anything that is input and output correlated here. So this is what you want to set up here. There are also some configurations that you can use, and what this then allows you to do is basically change the volume of your playback signal, for example, without having to change the output on your interface or on your loudspeakers in general. So if I'm just playing back anything right now, you can hear that something differs, and I'm going to talk about this in just a second. Just let me quickly show you what happens if I'm now regulating the output volume via this knob and not via anything else. For example, the stereo out fader here. So now if I'm talking, you hear some sort of ducking, but we'll get to this in just a second. And if I'm now stopping to talk and I'm regulating this knob here, you hear that the music gets louder or quieter based on the volume I set here. So now, this is not the only neat feature that the control room has, but it also allows you to put in insert effects on all of your buses here. In this case, we have reference and reference effects. And if you remember from the audio connections, these are the cues I've set up here. They are not that important for now. We'll talk about those in a different video. Then you have the talkback, which is in this case, well, the microphone, and you have your main monitors and monitors in general. And what you can do here is basically load any monitoring plugin. You wouldn't usually do anything else than load monitoring plugins, because this is the control room and you should not change the sound of what you are doing. So it makes sense to only load monitoring plugins. In my situation, I have some others available. In this case, a compressor, for example, which is triggered by my voice, and I have some other monitoring plugins in this case. You see that there are some equalizers here, but in just a second I'm talking about what those mean. Let's just quickly over all the other effects. If I'm now playing anything back, you see basically the frequency spectrum here, which is very neat, because so I can see if I have too much bass or too little high end in my songs. Then I have another monitoring plugin, which is Supervision. In this case, this comes with Cubase. And the other three ones here, so these equalizers are basically equalizers that introduce band passes from 150 to 5 kilohertz, from 350 to 5 kilohertz, and from 500 to 5 kilohertz, just so I can check when I'm mixing or mastering if all of my frequencies can be heard everywhere. And the last thing in the pipe here is a stereo enhancer, which is set to mono. So this allows me to quickly change from stereo to mono. I can also do it like this here if I'm clicking on this little button. So these are the features that I'm using here. So, and the next thing, the very important thing that you can use in the control room is this listen here. We've talked about this listen feature, and especially pre-fader and after-fader listening already, when we talked about, well, pre-fader and after-fader listening. But in this case, I just want to give you a quick rundown of how you can use this listen section. So say, for example, I'm in my arrangement here. You know that I've looped this, so I can just play this back. And if I now just want to listen to single elements of this song, I can do so by soloing them, but soloing them would also apply the sound effects on them, right? So if I do not want this, I can use the listen feature, which is then this little L button here, and this allows me to listen to the signal without having any sound effects going on. So if I'm just doing this for a pad loop here, this is how it would sound like solo. So if I'm also applying all of these effects, you can see here, right there. And on the other hand, if I do not want to listen to these effects, I can hit the listen button here, and I would get the dry signal, right? So this would be with effects, and this would be without effects. This also means that you can listen to your effects separately from anything else. So if I'm just soloing one of these effects, let's say this one, you hear that you hear the reverb tail, but on the other hand, if I just want to listen to what the effect introduces, because soloing them means also that you hear all of these tracks that come into this track here. If I'm just clicking on the listening button here, I only hear what my reverb channel will introduce to my music. So this would only be the reverb, and this would be everything included with the reverb, so all of these other instruments that are playing. So, and this is basically how I use the control room. You see that we have the compressor here, which is not really what I told you about, right? Only use this for monitoring purposes, but in this case the compressor has a different function, and this is why I'm using this here. Yeah, and this is basically one of the reasons why I use the control room, because it allows me to easily talk about what effects do for me, and also because I can monitor the sound effects separately, and also because I have this monitoring section here, which I can quickly use to change the volume of my sound. On the other hand, if you would export your song now, and you have the control room set to, like in this case, -2 decibels, this -2 decibels would not be exported. So what this means is, if you keep your faders as they were before and you have the mix ready and you want to export this, the control room would not change anything of your sound, because if you do not change anything in the mixing session here in the mixer, this is also not going to be exported. So all of these effects are not going to be exported, but they are loaded whenever you start a new project. So this is very neat as well. So you have all of these things available. You have all of your settings available, and this is what makes the control room stand out for me.